thank you during our pause of silence. There we do that so that we can get started and all in one place at the same time. Welcome to our Decoding talk on non-residential projects, really thinking about how we show compliance via the tool in Energy Code ACE called the Virtual Compliance Assistant. We are brought to you by Energy Code ACE. Oh, that's right. I'm going to talk first about we're recording. We're recording this session. We record all of our sessions and take the best of the series and put it on our website to be available afterwards. Our last Decoding talk was just on residential construction, in which we talked about HVAC changeouts exclusively, all the way from heating, ventilating, air conditioning, and ducting from start to finish. We are brought to you by Energy Code ACE. We are funded by you, the ratepayers of California. Thank you. Under the auspices of the California Public Utilities Commission and in support of the California Energy Commission. My name is Gina Rodda, and I am an energy consultant. I think I know most of you who are in the room today. I started back in the early 90s, really pretty much diving straight into energy consulting back when how we showed compliance was path A, B, or C, and then it was amazing in the early 2000, 2001. I think we got path D and E. What the heck? And then look where we are today. So I really come from the background of really knowing the energy code from right from the beginning of my career. And I've worked with Sally for, gosh, how many years now have we worked together, Sally?
10 years.
10 years.
It's been a long time.
Sally, what do we do together?
Well, you and I work together a lot. Yeah. For the Energy Code ACE program, we develop the materials, we develop tools such as this virtual compliance assistant, mostly to help market actors like you guys make it easier and faster for you to get through the compliance process and complete the tasks that you need to complete in compliance. So we're here to share the VCA tool with you guys, and hopefully it will help do that.
And that is our little quick key term for the virtual compliance assistant is VCA and ECA. I'm going to make songs out of all of this stuff. So we really think this tool can help projects from start to finish. From the very beginning at schematic design, as they're trying to determine what is the scope of the energy code and how it applies to their projects, and some tips and tricks on how to use this virtual compliance assistant throughout that the process of determining not only just which compliance forms are required, but which energy code requirements. I find not everyone is capturing the full breadth of the energy code for most of their projects. What is the common information we collect from our design teams to be able to document compliance, and where do the design teams figure out whether their designs are compliant to the energy code? And then how to go about some tips and tricks on using this tool to enable everyone to know their project, their design, their aspect of the energy code is compliant with code and has a form that helps document that. Here is our agenda for today. We're hoping to use the full 2 hours with you today without a break, so I hope you came prepared. Now that you know a little bit about Sally and I, we'd like to know a little about who's with us in the room today. So if you could let us know what role you serve. If you don't see your role listed here, go ahead and hit Other and then type in that webinar chat at the bottom what your role is. What's your comfort level in determining whether your project is compliant with the energy code? Do you have a way that you confirm when you submit to the building department, I know we're good to go. I know we're fully compliant. And then my last question for you, who on your project teams is responsible for completing the energy code forms, all of those certificate of compliance forms? This is just to give us a feel of the design team makeup that we have in the room with us. So in your projects, who or whom is responsible for completing those compliance forms? So we have quite a few engineers. Oops, sorry, Sally.
That's okay. I was going to say we're looking for a role there. So do you guys typically see energy consultants? Do you see the design engineers doing that? Do you see the architects completing the forms? In your experience on your projects, what role is typically completing the form?
Well, it's just, yeah, we have a lot of engineers in the room, so that kind of follows then with people saying here they're used to that design engineer. I'm assuming when you say design engineer, you mean mechanical design engineers responsible for that. And that has been, in my experience, historically how these projects have happened. Sometimes what I've found, though, is that the mechanical engineer isn't always thinking about the aspects of the project not involved with the mechanical systems and how are we showing compliance for those other systems. I love the fact that we have a large group of people who are really comfortable with the code today, and I'm hoping that that will show with some of maybe your questions that you want to bring to the table and get some answers on today. Let's go back to our presentation. So let's dive into what we wanted to talk about with you guys today. We want to start with one of our favorite tools, Reference ACE, because to me, if you have a question on code, you're not sure what the requirements are on something, this should be your first stop as a design professional. Within Reference ACE, there's the actual copy of the code language itself, fully hyperlinked to some of the other resources, such as the manual. The manual uses complete sentences and examples to explain just the non-residential aspects of the code, and also residential. And the reference appendices, Sally, why do we think the reference appendices are so important and why a lot of people have a tendency to forget about them?
Well, there's a lot in the reference appendices as far as, you know, default tables that can be used or testing protocols for field testing. So I also did not look at the reference appendices very much when I started working with Title 24 Part 6. I mostly just looked at the code language, but there's really a lot in the reference appendices that people need to be aware of.
It has become almost the first place I go these days versus the last place I go. So everything we're going to talk about in Energy Code ACE is going to be surrounded around the fact that you have to have an account. A lot of the resources and tools available on Energy Code ACE do not require an account, but the Virtual Compliance Assistant does require that you have an account and that you're logged into your account to use the tool that we're about to talk about. And why is that, Sally? Why do they have to have an account for the Virtual Compliance Assistant?
Well, as you guys will see as we look at this together, it saves your projects. And in order for the website to be able to save your projects, you have to log in. So I know remembering passwords and usernames is everybody's like worst nightmare. It's mine too. But you have to have an account to be able to use this tool.
I just have no patience. I want to use that 3 seconds that it makes me put in that stuff for other things. I'm like, I just want to get it to what I want to get to. I'm one of the most impatient people when it comes to getting into certain things and asking for my passwords. We have 2 ways to get to the information we're going to talk about today. And I actually would suggest if you guys have a separate screen and have the ability to go to the Energy Code ACE website and follow along, hopefully have created that account, and follow along with what we're doing, then you might have a better feel of the value or what you might want to take from what we're going to talk about together in this 2 hours after today. So if you're not an expert, so there was a couple people saying that they don't have a lot of confidence in their comfort level regarding understanding the triggers of the energy code, you might want to start here. And this is, we have a new section on our website. We always used to have only 3 tabs, tools, training, resources. But very recently, the Get Forms has been added to our website. Sally, why did that happen?
Well, the compliance forms are now on the Energy Code ACE website, and a lot of people were coming to the homepage and not being able to use that quick and easy button to get to where the forms are located. So we just added this drop down to help people get there quickly.
So you will find these days that you will find some forms on the Energy Commission's website, and those are ADA compliant forms. And the ADA compliant forms don't have the dynamic aspects integrated into the forms that have been shifted to the Energy Code ACE website, where you can find the full dynamic forms. In fact, that link is even supported on the Energy Commission's website of, you want the full dynamic forms, hit this link. And the dynamic forms allows you to actually utilize them in terms of showing compliance or be using this virtual compliance assistant we're going to talk about. Now, a lot of times people are not quite sure. If you're not sure which form I need for what, you want to use Forms ACE. Forms ACE is another entry location to the virtual compliance assistant because it helps you determine what is it in my project that triggers which forms in terms of my scope of work. So we are only going to be talking about the 2019 code. So always the Energy Code ACE likes to support this code cycle plus the last one. We're usually right now buildings right now that are subject to the previous code cycle. And some of us are even still building projects that are subject to the code cycle before that. So Energy Code ACE always likes to support easily at least 2 code cycles and in many times 3 code cycles. So Forms ACE is a tool that allows you to put in your scope of work, and it's going to help you determine what is it that needs to be done to show compliance. So it's going to ask you questions like, tell us what occupancy you have. The requirements for a non-residential occupancy are different than, let's say, a high-rise multifamily building occupancy R that has 4 habitable stories or more above grade. This is something that's being saved, so it's going to ask you to name your project so that you can get back to it easily. What's your scope of work again? Core and shell is going to look different than new construction, which is going to look different than an alteration. Number of stories is helping determine some of the requirements behind solar ready for multifamily, so number of stories does matter for the energy code. And then it's putting a list, a menu together here. Sally, what is this menu about and how do I use this through Forms ACE?
Well, the Forms ACE doesn't have that many questions because it doesn't need that much information to determine which forms you need. There are 2 questions that look like this. This example is saying which scopes want to comply prescriptively. There's another question just like this that says which would like to comply via the performance path. And there are different forms for performance versus prescriptive. If you're doing this really early in your project and you don't know yet whether you want to comply prescriptively or performance, I would go ahead and choose the scope here on the prescriptive question. So if you're the lighting designer and you're not sure yet, I would just click indoor, outdoor, and sign lighting here. And that way, when you get to the virtual compliance assistant tool, it'll take you through the questions for lighting to determine if your design can comply prescriptively.
Or you're just the design professional and you're not in charge of compliance, but you want to be making sure throughout your project you're meeting some of the minimum code requirements. So here we strongly suggest picking this is where you pick your scope. What is it that's under your scope that you're dealing with? Go ahead and say it's the prescriptive method so that you understand what is prescriptively required and when you're meeting those prescriptive requirements and when you're not. If you're not meeting the prescriptive requirements, that's the time to really be thinking about, do I change my design or do I utilize the performance approach? So there's lots of little helpful hints throughout these tools that we do in Energy Code ACE. If you see a question mark button, I would always press it if you're not 100% sure what it's asking of you. And here, it could be, we already know ahead of time we're doing the performance approach, and of which then it's going to be saying, okay, you're not using this tool for that because this tool is not used to document the performance method. you have to use state-approved software for the performance method. That's supporting what Sally was saying. At this time, early on in the project, just click it all saying you're doing prescriptive. Now, Sally, we don't ask for the address information, anyone's phone numbers, or anything like that in our tools at Energy Code ACE. Why is that?
California has some pretty strict data privacy laws that went into effect, or I guess were updated a couple years ago when we were developing this tool. And some of the restrictions are about personal information, including address. So we can't collect the project address, but we do collect the zip code because that's necessary to determine what climate zone the project is in. And if you guys are all design engineers, you're probably familiar with climate zone impacts the requirements for the project. So we collect the zip code, but the little help thing there says please don't enter the full project address.
And I find a lot of people are not 100% sure what climate zone is associated with which zip code. As we all know, there are some tools out there, like there's an Excel spreadsheet. There's a great climate zone map through the Energy Commission. Well, here's another resource. Using Forms ACE or the Virtual Compliance Assistant is also going to give you climate zone information based on zip code.
Right.
So here we go, where it's asking you about using the tool. So at this point, you're going to use this online tool. And here you are where it's telling you, here are the forms you need to show compliance to the components that you picked on that list, and that you can get things now started with assigning team members and putting things into your project folder. So that's the Not an Expert. It's walking you through certain things. It's helping you understand where your prescriptive methods are in terms of how you're going about your forms that are going to be included in your project scope. If you're an expert and you don't need that help, I'm someone who wouldn't go through that. So I would go straight to my projects, and I'm going to open up and I'm going to create a new project. And I'm going to set, hey, I know that I'm going to need commissioning. I know I'm going to be doing lighting. I do still need to name the project because that's going to be name of the project in my project folder. I still do need to give the city and zip code because, again, even with this expert way, I cannot put that information into the Energy Code ACE system. And here I am, the same place I ended as I went through Forms ACE at the Virtual Compliance Assistant, ready to assign team members and dive into potentially some of my other projects. So those are the two ways I can get to the Virtual Compliance Assistant being ready to be used for my projects. Now, I really work a lot with my designers on when is the best time to integrate the Energy Code. Historically, the Energy Code has kind of been thought about just in terms of filling out the forms just so you could go for permit, which happens during the construction documents phase of a project. But as our Energy Code is more and more aggressive, Sally, when do we really need to be thinking about how the Energy Code is integrated into my project?
It really needs to be a part of those initial project requirements. So when you're in schematics, and even, just after you've understood the programming of the project and you're talking about, getting schematic design narratives together and documenting the project requirements, that's a good time to start talking about, do you think this project can meet the prescriptive requirements? Do you know right off the bat that you want to go performance because you're already going to be doing a model for LEED or for CalGreen or some other purpose? So having those conversations right off the bat in schematics, and then we'll show you during this decoding talk about how to use this tool to kind of continue that conversation through the design process.
This is at schematic design is when we want to make sure everyone understands what's in their contract. I have had a few projects in just this last year, yes, in 2020, in which they go to the building department, submit, and their plan check comment is, where are the compliance documents for the envelope? because the mechanical engineer definitely showed compliance for the mechanical systems, the electrical engineer did the electrical systems, but no one thought about the envelope. Because the architect, honestly, is typically not one of those roles that's assigned a task of completing compliance documents. So we're going to talk about how we can start at the very beginning of the project and use the Virtual Compliance Assistant as a tool to support projects, so then when we go through construction documents, submit for permit, everything is just beautifully organized, set up, nothing is missed. And then also how it can be used as we go through value engineering and construction administration on a job. So let's start with schematic design. And that schematic design, this is a great time to assign those compliance tasks. Who's doing what, and how do they need to speak to others? Design review is an aspect of the Energy Code that is required for all new conditioned buildings. I don't care the size. It's a kiosk of 10 square feet. I've had a few that's been 90 square foot kiosks. Guess what? They triggered design review. And design review is required to happen at schematic design, because it's all about what Sally was talking about, starting the narrative of how the project is determining compliance and integrating it into the design. I have found these days that the roof has become a hot commodity. We're trying to do a lot with the roof. This is where we at Gabel, for our clients, we immediately do the solar-ready paperwork so that everyone can be on the same page of what needs to happen at the roof. Let's not start designing things on the roof until we know how much room we have on the roof. So assigning compliance tasks. So it's really kind of looking at the entire project scope. We write up the project scope and we start breaking down who is doing what. Now, why this is important to do early on is also then understanding how the code looks at the design requirements of a project. Are they mandatory measures? Those are measures that cannot be traded away. There's no wiggle room. They're at the baseline. And mandatory measures are expected to be integrated into the design and supported with note blocks. But, Sally, a lot of times we find people are forgetting about the mandatory measures, aren't we?
Yeah, not all of the mandatory measures are reflected on the compliance forms. So that's why things like note blocks to cover those mandatory measures are really important, so that they're included in the construction documents.
And if you understand we need to show for compliance at the very beginning, well, then that's going to be easy to integrate note blocks. Let's just start updating some of our standard note blocks with template language. Then we have two methods to show compliance to the standards, that prescriptive approach we were talking about. And prescriptive is also sets the energy budgets for many of our design features. And we can use the prescriptive approach for each building feature, envelope all by itself, mechanical all by itself, or we can use the performance approach and be trading those energy uses amongst themselves or within their own features, like envelope can use the performance method just for envelope and trade windows against wall insulation. Or I can use the performance approach for mechanical systems against envelope and also then potentially indoor lighting and conditioned spaces. And at the end of the day, we're looking at compliance documentation only so that we can get it into the drawings and have that checked off when we go through plan check. I like to say those compliance documents are only 100% supporting what we already have integrated into the design documents, and that it's someday, maybe we can get rid of those compliance forms because everyone integrates everything into their design beautifully, and they're no longer needed as a tool to support compliance. Wouldn't that be amazing, Sally?
That's the dream.
It's the dream, man. It's Gina's dream. So let's walk through which building features are in which bucket. So let's look at our mandatory measures bucket. All of these covered process environments or building features are mandatory, meaning there's no wiggle room. You have to meet these requirements. Refrigerated spaces when they are not subject to Title 20, so those are spaces exceeding 3,000 square feet. Retail food stores exceeding 8,000 square feet, we have a lot of refrigeration requirements. parking garages. Ventilation is a big deal in parking garages, enclosed parking garages, and of course lighting. Process boilers, these are single boilers or boilers in series, compressed air systems. Elevators, I find every single project I work on, the biggest thing we fight on is who's going to take responsibility for the elevator requirements associated with lighting and ventilation. Is it electrical? Is it mechanical? Is it the elevator sub that we don't even have on board yet? Who's going to be making sure the elevator specs and design that we go in for permit is going to meet these energy code requirements? It's crazy that I find that is the biggest heartache in most of my projects. Escalators and moving walkways for transportation function areas. So I don't have those on all projects, but I like to make sure from the very beginning, did we trigger it or not? Commissioning requirements. So commissioning, full-blown commissioning, is triggered for new non-residential occupancies in mixed-use occupancy buildings or non-residential buildings that exceed 10,000, that are 10,000 square feet or more of conditioned floor area. But like I said, even if you're 100 square feet, you are still going to trigger design review. And that is mandatory. You can't trade it away for something else. Solar ready. It's dependent upon occupancy and number of stories. Again, number of stories matters in the energy code. And this is where I find if we don't think about this till the end, we almost always don't have enough solar ready area. And we have to start redesigning mechanical, roof gardens, public areas, this access, window cleaning access. There's so much going on the roof. And that is definitely not something we want to redesign when we're about to go in for permit. Electrical power distribution, again, mandatory. We should be thinking about these early on in projects and making sure that the design completely supports it from the very beginning so our budgets and our timing on our project stays on target. Now, what we're about to talk about here in this bucket, I can either go performance or I go prescriptive. It's important to understand that you can't use the performance approach for all features of the building. So the envelope associated with conditioned spaces, I actually do have some envelope requirements for unconditioned spaces, such as daylighting and large voluminous rooms. But we're just going to talk about the envelope associated with conditioned spaces. Those mechanical systems serving those conditioned spaces. And I want to make sure, I think I have a lot of mechanical engineers in the room today. This is a discussion that happens a lot, that conditioned space is anything that maintains a temperature between 55 and 90. I don't care if you're doing it for a covered process environment. Who cares? You're doing and maintaining a temperature between 55 and 90. It is truly considered a process environment if it is 55 and below, which then it's a refrigerated warehouse and your requirements just got a heck of a lot more stringent. Or if it's above 90, great, fine. We're not going to make you show compliance to the envelope. But if it's anywhere in between 55 and 90, you've not only triggered mechanical requirements for that load that maintains the temperature between 55 and 90, you have triggered the envelope requirements of the energy code. Plumbing. Plumbing, you know, it's relatively simplistic, but there's some nice trade-offs we could get for our domestic hot water service water heating equipment we're using in a building. Solar thermal. So Solar Ready has a solar thermal component for certain occupancies, multifamily, hotel, motel. Solar Ready is not tradable in the performance method, but the solar thermal aspects of Solar Ready are tradable in the performance method. And then our lighting in those indoor conditioned spaces can then be mixed up and matched and all sorts of jiggling and juggling going on in the performance approach. But these prescriptive requirements cannot be integrated into the performance approach. So sometimes people go, well, then why are they prescriptive? Why not just call them mandatory? It's because now within each of these features, there are components that have some flexibility, such as the lighting power density associated with my indoor lighting, outdoor lighting, and sign lighting. in these covered process environments, there's some alternative ways I can go about utilizing fan energy with just those particular systems, but no trade-offs with any other systems in the building. So Sally and I decided to take one of her favorite places she goes to on a daily basis, and it's her happy place, and use this as our example project as we go through our material today as an example of how a project can be integrated through or utilized with the virtual compliance assistant. So it's a simplistic building. It's just a couple of rooms. It's one story. And we're going to start this project in my projects in the Virtual Compliance Assistant. And there's information that's general. And this, again, is confirming that city, that climate, the zip code to be able to get the climate zone. It's that reiteration of what's going on versus prescriptive versus mandatory. This is that quick way I can dive into it quickly as an expert user. You can see that now it's not asking about, do you have indoor lighting, do you have outdoor lighting? It's going straight to what forms are we talking about. So this is part of that expert user associated with using this tool as one of the ways to get in here. But this is also, remember, we're talking about assigning duties and assigning people to aspects of the project. And how do we go about doing that in the Virtual Compliance Assistant, Sally?
Well, the tool has a team member function where you can invite and assign team members, and this is for a couple reasons. I mean, different project team members have to collaborate on these forms. If there's an energy consultant, they may own this project and start this project in the tool and then invite the different designers as reviewers or as responsible people on each form. If there's a junior engineer, an associate engineer who's maybe in charge of filling this form out, but the PE who's signing and stamping the drawings wants to review it within the tool, the associate engineer can invite the PE as the responsible person. So there's a few roles here, and they're described by these icons. So the eye icon is for viewing only. The little stamp in the middle is for the responsible person, and then the pencil, the editing pencil, is for the documentation author. So for each form that you're going to complete in the tool, you can assign these different roles. And if you guys are familiar with the forms, you probably know that responsible person and documentation author are defined roles, and they're signing that signature block on the last page of the form. So the only person who can edit a form is the documentation author. The responsible person and the documentation author may be the same person, so you may be playing both roles. But if you have a different documentation author and a different responsible person, that responsible person can't edit the form. And we'll show that as we go through the Yoga Junction example.
Everyone gets to make comments. This is part why we think this is a great tool to be able to get everyone to make comments on where we are to date. Are there any changes happening? How do we communicate back and forth? I know all of you are used to other online systems that help project coordination, and this can be integrated as part of how we go about organizing and communicating on projects specific to just the energy code. Now, design review is supposed to happen for all new non-residential buildings and mixed-use buildings with non-residential occupancies, and it has to happen at schematic design. We think this is a great time to start the conversation about the energy code. So here we are, we're diving right into our NRCC CXR form. That is where we document design review, even if we don't have full-blown commissioning. And think about putting this into play and using it with one of your kickoff meetings. Sally, you have a great way of potentially thinking about how to use this design kickoff aspect of the Virtual Compliance Assistant in a meeting.
Yeah, that's really what this was designed for. As Gina was saying, design review is technically part of the commissioning requirements, part of the commissioning section, and that's why it's documented on the CXR form. But the user interface for this form was really designed so that you can start at scope and then move on to kickoff and use this tool during a project team meeting, during that design review kickoff, and really just look at this tool all together and go through these questions. And not only is it documenting the design review on your compliance form, it's also kind of facilitating that conversation that needs to happen at design review, such as documenting owner's requirements related to energy goals.
And I find most projects don't have a dedicated design review kickoff call. We have a kickoff call. And so what I'll be doing is having this open in the background as being one of those team members at that meeting and helping capturing what we're talking about within this tool so it's there and captured. And one of the things we just want to point out as we're going through this, some other tips and tricks of the virtual compliance assistant, it's keeping track of what you're doing. And if you've missed something that is needed for that form to actually show compliance at the end of the day, it's going to say, well, you skipped some questions. Sally, what's the difference between me clicking fix them versus me clicking continue anyway?
Yeah. Sometimes if you're using this tool early in the design process, you may not know the answer to the question yet. That may be something that's not addressed until DD. So in that case, you can hit continue anyway and still be able to go through the tool without answering that question. But like Gina said, all the questions need to be answered before you generate that compliance form for permit, because we really focused on not asking questions that aren't absolutely required. So if you hit fix them, it's going to take you back to the questions that you missed. If you want to hit continue anyways, that's fine. You can go through the tool. But at some point before permit application, you will have to come back and answer those questions.
And I'm pretty positive at the beginning in schematic design, you're going to be hitting a lot of continue anyway. And this has got to be one of my favorite things integrated into the design review aspect of the commissioning form. Sally, what's this?
In the kickoff meeting, the form asks you to define the project schedule. So it's asking you when schematics and DD and CD and CA are. And the design review needs to happen in CD. So it's going to take that date, and then when we get to that date in the future, if you hit yes here, I want an email reminder. Even if it's 18 months later, the tool is going to email the person that's been entered as the design reviewer and say, hey, you know, it's time to do the design review. Don't forget about the design review.
And here's a link to get to your project. So when we talk about design review and what are the questions being asked, so the tool is walking through that design review development of the scope of the project. What's going on in terms of efficiency associated with the envelope and the specific questions that need to be asked to facilitate how compliance has to be shown when we go for permit. For our HVAC and water heating systems, for our lighting systems. It's walking through what the code requires, needs to be documented to meet these requirements. And it's a great way to you're getting that design reviewer a heads up, and this is going to come up again when they do that design review before it goes in for permit at CD. This pops up and goes, this is what was said back at the kickoff meeting. How are things going? Is the project as designed meeting these requirements? Because that's what design review is all about. So another thing we think it should happen at schematic design is really considering what happens at the roof. I think that this should be done, honestly, by the architects. First thing, very, very, very first thing, in which they're figuring out how best to give all of the subconsultants a roof plan that reserves what is going to be used for other things and where that should best be. So if we go into the Solar Ready aspect of the Virtual Compliance Assistant, the NRCC CRA form, I'm just putting in, I know the roof area at this time. I know things might shift a bit, but I pretty much know what my roof area is. I already know where the project is. Is there any shading such as huge high-rises, mountains, and all this other stuff that are affecting the solar zone? If I know about skylights or I have an idea about how much skylight area I want, I might have to go back and clean this up a little bit later on in the project, but I don't have to consider solar ready in any areas in which I have that skylights. It's then going to tell me, this is your minimum solar ready area. Design that or block it out on your roof. Block it out now so that mechanical, electrical, everyone, architect, in terms of what's going on with egress up there on the roof, can keep that reserved so it's good to go when we go for permit. Let's do a check your understanding on how we can utilize the Virtual Compliance Assistant in schematic design. What Energy Code ACE tool helps you determine which forms are required for permit application? What's going to help you understand what forms are required? What Energy Code ACE tool walks you through completing those forms? Excellent. So I see I only have a few players who are playing with me in my check your understanding. Okay. Excellent. Forms ACE is going to help you determine which forms you need. The tool that's going to help you complete the forms is the Virtual Compliance Assistant. The Forms ACE, once it determines you that you've got the forms done, it gives you two choices, right, Sally? Download those forms you need and/or use the Virtual Compliance Assistant to fill out the forms. Are there any other choices at that point?
The only other choice is if you know at that time you're going to pursue performance, and then it says you need to go use the compliance software to model.
Okay, I have to tell you guys, I don't use Forms ACE because I know which forms are required. So I'd ask Sally, remind me what it says. Excellent, thank you everyone. Let's start talking about the design development phase of a project at DD. How can we utilize the Virtual Compliance Assistant through DD? So now we're starting to design things. And now is the time for people to be double-checking, confirming, hey, I think this meets current code, but did things shift? Did they change some of these requirements? I can't quite remember. Now is the time to kind of throw them at the Virtual Compliance Assistant and see if that design's on target. And this might be when we make that decision, whether we're going to go performance or prescriptive. So here we have a very preliminary design of what we're thinking we want to do for our mechanical system, a very simple rooftop package DX system, have a simple layout going on in terms of my supply and return grills, and I'm getting some ideas what I want to do for my ventilation systems. But I'm not quite 100% sure if I can remember what the most current for the 2019 code and what's going on with the federal Title 20 efficiency requirements. What is that minimum efficiency? I just can't remember. So I'm going to be going through my mechanical form and looking at just my dry systems. One of the things I love about the Virtual Compliance Assistant is that it breaks down the forms. Hey, Daryl, can you put my green arrow into the main pod here? It always shows up in a place I can't move it. Okay. So, and can you bring it down a little bit? I still can't even grab it there. Thank you. So here we go where I'm at dry systems. But the Virtual Compliance Assistant breaks down all of the forms into their major components. So I can dive into just one section, here, dry systems, without having to tab through things. And there was a definite idea that we can TurboTax these forms. I don't know if you guys use TurboTax or not, but this is very similar. We can go back to a very particular section. I want to talk about my assets in terms of being able to wrangle this information as you're developing those forms at the end of the day. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the information about my dry systems and that equipment schedule, and it's going to help me with what the minimum efficiency requirements are for that specific equipment type. And it's even telling me where I find the information on that efficiency. This is as dictated through Title 20 and also Title 24, Part 6, Table 110.2. And then these are direct links, hyperlinks, aren't they, Sally? Or if I click this, will it take me to that code section?
Yeah, it does. So throughout there, this tool is really meant to hold people's hands. And sometimes it's confusing about why are we asking this question. And that's what those little tool tips are, the circle with the question mark in it. So in a lot of ways, we've explained what the question is about and how it impacts the application of that requirement. And then as much as we could, we referenced the code sections as well for the questions. So if you click on one of those hyperlinks, it'll bring you to Section 110.2 or to Title 20 within the reference-based tool, so you can read the code language that's related to this question.
But, that type's awfully small, and I can't remember if the number is bigger or smaller is better. I just can't remember. I'm hoping all of you remember. And so the virtual compliance assistant will also immediately tell you, give you immediate feedback. Hey, wait a minute. You put in a 75 AFUE, and the code dictates you need to have an 80% AFUE or greater. So you need to rethink this. So those will pop up. It won't just fill out the form with you not meeting compliance. It will give you immediate feedback on what's going on. And then it's going to walk you through other things you need to consider, such as equipment sizing. Is it the smallest in the series to satisfy the load? If it's not, and you're not meeting some of the exceptions associated with how you meet minimum sizing requirements, then this right here might be the reason why you go performance. So we get to look at these compliance status reviews, and they're, yes?
Will you go back a slide really quick? I want to make a point about that drop down. So what you guys are seeing here with the not applicable, those are the exceptions that are in the code for this requirement. So you'll see that a lot in the forms where the choice is NA and then whatever. And if you choose that, what you're saying is, I'm meeting the exception that allows standby equipment to not meet the sizing requirement. So it's putting the exception out there for you guys without you having to reference the code to read the exception.
There's as much being provided as possible of understanding what code is dictating. It's not going to make you go find it to figure out what's going on. Things are color-coded, but additionally words are used for anyone in the room who might be colorblind. And here we have a status page that immediately tells me where I'm having some issues. But there's always this compass over to the right, and the compass allows you, if you click it, to again another way to always get to the status anywhere you are within the virtual compliance assistant. And Sally, what are some tips on using this, what do you guys call it, the compass? The compass layout? What is it called?
I call it the compass. I use it because if I'm in dry systems and I complete that section and move on to distribution, I pop the compass out real quick and see if my dry systems complies. So it saves you from having to toggle to the summary page where it shows all the sections and whether they comply. You can just pop the compass out and see if dry systems complies. If it doesn't, then you may want to go back to dry systems and go through and see what piece of equipment is not complying. If it does show that dry system complies, then you just move on to distribution. So that's how I use it.
So it's always there for you to get in there, and if you hit the edit, it takes you then straight to that section associated with that equipment. And here we see that breakdown. I'm going to go straight into my dry systems, and I really love this view. This view is giving me a summary. These are summary tables, and Sally, these look very much like the compliance forms, don't they?
Yeah, we modeled them after the table on the compliance form so that when you do finally generate that PDF and you look at the tables, it's not completely different than what you've been seeing in the tools. But the real advantage here is if you want to go, let's say you entered information on an early DD set and then you want to go back and check on the 100% DD set, you can come straight to these summary tables and check the 100% set against these tables without having to go back through the dry system equipment section and scroll through all the questions. So it just presents the information, the project information that's been entered in a table format.
And then this is where you can provide comments. So there is the comment bubble that at any time, and this could be you're having the senior engineer look over what's going on and, hey, what might be changing, what things might be missed, where are we going to go next? And here a comment was given, hey, we're going to go with a 4-ton system, so we need to revise this because we have changed the sizing associated with this particular project, and I'm bringing in the comment right in there. And I also get to, if I've dealt with it, mark it as resolved. So it's a way of making sure that comments and as design features are altering, that we're capturing them and that we haven't forgot to deal with something. So if everything's looking great, you might then decide, well, you know what, let's go ahead and use that prescriptive approach. We don't want to coordinate with others doing the performance, and there's just really no need to. We're just at the end of the day going to hit the print button and make sure we capture signatures. But if we're not, well, then this is a good time at DD, not CD, DD, to see should we be thinking about playing with others, working with the architects or the electrical engineer, et cetera, to get flexibility. Because maybe I don't want to make changes to my design. So here's an example of the compliance status. Everything is green. I might just be hitting print at the end of the day on this because my design, as is meeting the prescriptive requirements. I know that because everything is green. But now here I come across my lighting systems and I see some red. And I see it's all about the wattage allowances. And it probably means that there is too much wattage. I have some lights that are using more wattage than what's allowed. And it's actually giving me some guidance. I'm going to go ahead and download the form and see what's going on. Or I'm downloading the form we share with others. Or I just sometimes download the form because I see things better in the form. But you'll notice that it's going to be giving you messages. Hey, you want to download a form that's not compliant. So we just want you to know, go ahead and download it. We're still going to let you download the form, but it is going to have a watermark that says this project is not compliant to code. Okay, we talked a little bit about how this can be used at DD. Let's do a couple check your understanding questions. Who's going to play with me? If you are the energy consultant, what permission should you be assigned for all the forms? Should you only be able to view forms as the energy consultant? Should you only be able to sign off as the responsible person? Should you be able to sign off as the documentation author? What should the energy consultant be doing in terms of permissions? You're the mechanical engineer. What permission should you be assigned? You only are looking at it. You sign off as responsible person. You're signing off as documentation author. You're the lighting contractor because you want to start getting bids on what's being designed to date, and you want to let them be able to see what's going on, maybe comment and give some alternative options for what's being developed at this time. Maybe we're doing design build. What should they be doing? Looks like I have my same 6 people who are playing with me. Thank you very much. And you guys are doing fantastic. Yeah, that energy consultant not only needs to view the form, they need to sign off as the documentation author. So we do need to give them documentation author rights so that they can sign off if they are the documentation author. If they're not the documentation author and you don't have an energy consultant, it's the design professional, then fine. Then it's that design professional who's acting as the energy consultant is going to be the documentation author and the responsible person. You guys are spot on. That mechanical engineer is going to be the responsible person. They might also be the documentation author, but they are definitely going to be the responsible person associated with the mechanical systems. And if I'm bringing in someone to take a look at things and just provide some commentary, then yeah, I'm going to allow them to view the form. There's no way in heck do I want them to start changing things. But I do want to give them the ability to see where we're at and be able to provide comments, feedback. Excellent. Let's move on. Okay, let's move on to CD, sorry. We're already in DD. We're now in construction documents. We're now starting to tighten things up. We're starting to make sure we're good to go so that we have minimal plan check comments happening when we submit for permit. And so we want to start finalizing things. And one thing that can be done, if this tool is being used to kind of bounce things off, whether it's compliant to the energy code or not, this is where we can come in and make sure that final drawing set that I always like to start doing this at 80% CD. Have someone responsible for going in and making sure what we're seeing is still compliant to code. Has things shifted? Confirm that people are assigned the roles to sign off, because now's the time you need to start capturing signatures. And you want to make sure that you're getting that capturing of everyone signing off so that you can have forms downloaded with minimal issues, no watermark saying cannot be used for compliance. So let's take an example of our project. So we're tightening things up, and we still have the issue in which our lighting system is not meeting compliance. So we're going to dive into those tables. Remember, I get to use these tables, and I'm going to look at what's going on. I'm going, we're going to go ahead with L2 and just tell me what the wattage needs to be. Just tell me what it needs to be for us to be compliant, and then I'll go ahead and design and select a light fixture that meets that minimum wattage so that we can come back and we are in compliance. Then I need to make sure this is part of that verification process. I see the updated lighting schedule. Have they picked something that's at least 160 watts, nothing that's over 160 watts, so that what I've documented previously as giving them an idea where they need to be is still good to go, so that this form, when I hit print, is going to match up beautifully with what's being designed. Would it be so great that someday then this is where we can maybe get rid of the forms? If we're making sure that design is compliant to code, well then we don't need to document the forms proving our design meets the code. I mean, these forms are all supposed to be their design tools, is what they are. They're design tools to make sure everyone understands what the code requires. So let's make sure and go through that everything is matching up to the design and that we have assigned responsible people. So here's an example of, yeah, everything was green and you are compliant, but you didn't assign someone to sign off as the responsible person. So I'm going to go back into that team. I'm going to assign someone, then tell them, hey, go in and sign off so that I can print out a form that's beautiful. And I go to print it and I see all the entered questions are complete. You're good to go. Why is it still saying not usable for compliance? This form has errors. I don't know what forms. What's happening? Everything was supposed to be beautiful. People promised me in that decoding talk that this would go gorgeous, but still I see not usable for compliance. Sally, what do people do if they're having issues, if they're stuck, if they're frustrated?
Well, I think two things. One, the most common error we're seeing when we have users write us in about not usable for compliance is that they haven't assigned the responsible person. So that's required by the form. It's after you've verified that everything is compliant, so you're seeing it's compliant, and then if you haven't assigned a responsible person, you need to do that. You can either do it how we showed earlier by assigning team members, or you can do it at that summary tab where it's showing everything is compliant. If you scroll down, it'll have a little right here, it'll say team, and you can assign a responsible person right here. If that person is not a team member already listed here, you may have to add a new team member, and that's what we showed earlier. if the responsible person is listed, you click on that little stamp icon, and that will assign them as the responsible person. So that's the most common error we see when it says not usable for compliance. If that's not the case and you've assigned the responsible person and you're still seeing that, you can always submit an error report. So if you go back up to your name and scroll down to report a problem, a little pop-up will come up and it'll ask you what the issue is. Please be as specific as possible. If it's too broad, we're really going to have to, we'll just respond to you and try to get a better idea of the issue. But if you submit it straight up and are detailed enough that we understand what your issue is, then we can help you resolve it. And we try to respond within 24 hours, so usually it's pretty quick. And we've had a decent amount of people do this, which is great. And then we get their issue resolved, and then they can print their form and put it on the plan set.
So Michael has a great idea. Do we have any pop-ups, Sally, that that help with some of the most common issues?
No, I mean, we have this pop-up that you're showing at the bottom saying that it's got errors. Please go back through your form and confirm that all your questions have been answered. So that's one thing to check. But that's really all we've got here besides the go ahead and report the issue.
But we'll think about that, Michael. Maybe we'll get there. So I actually had to submit a problem of which then I had missed saying no to a question. And I was given feedback of, you missed this question right here. Go back and just hit no and you should be fine. I did. I went back and hit no, and now I'm able to download. Elias is asking a great question right now, and that is about the E&V form. And Sally, it'll be there soon, right? What's going on with that E&V form?
Yeah, we're doing final QC on the PDF that's coming out of the tool. So the user interface part is done, and we're just QCing that PDF. So it'll be up and available within the next couple weeks.
Yay! I have to say every now and then I go in there because I'm doing an NRCC E&V alteration. I'm doing a simple window alteration, and I know this tool is easier than me doing it within Adobe Connect version 2017. And I'm like, oh, that's right, it's not there yet. So it'll be there soon. I'm looking forward to it also.
Yep.
So remember, the forms that we get from the Virtual Compliance Assistant do not include the project address. So I do need to come in here, and I'm showing you I'm using Adobe, and I'm putting in the project address. Kind of a pain, but whatever, I get it. I got so many other great things from this tool. And then I also need to put in my signatures, not only for documentation author, but also collect that signature for the responsible person. So do remember to go back and complete the design review, and remember, you probably got an email saying, hey, this is when you said, way back when, project schedule-wise, the design review is happening when you were going for permit. So it's just an invaluable tool to be making sure that the design and the goals are being met, because it's going to go back and it's going to say, this is what you told us during design review. How are things going? How did it go with the envelope? How did it go with lighting? How did it go with mechanical? Okay, let's do a check your understanding on CD. So why does this form here, the NRCC MEC form, not include any address information? It's not that we don't want to. It's not that we don't want to give you a complete form and this has just made your entire life so much better than it was before. There are privacy laws. So address is missing isn't that it's filled out wrong. Address information not being there is because Energy Code ACE cannot collect that information. How would you add the project address to the form? Do you guys have any tips or tricks you'd like to share on how you get signatures? How you vote text boxes? That is such a beautiful way of doing things. It's a way in Adobe Connect to go in, in Adobe, not Adobe Connect, how with Adobe you can set things up for people to fill out things easily. Bluebeam. Bluebeam is such an amazing tool, and let's talk a little bit about Bluebeam. So I'm hoping all of you guys have heard that these forms in their dynamic format, when you download them directly and you're going to do them yourselves, Bluebeam doesn't work. But Sally, does Bluebeam work with these forms that are spit out through the virtual compliance assistant?
Yeah, it does. The issue with Bluebeam is that they don't support the dynamic capability, and that's why if you download the dynamic PDF from the Energy Code website, so not through this tool, but just the dynamic PDF to complete it, Bluebeam won't work. So it has to be a static PDF, meaning uneditable. And if you use this virtual compliance assistant tool, the PDF that comes back to you is not dynamic. It's uneditable because the user interface is where you edit it. And so you can use Bluebeam to add the signatures and add the project address. So that's right.
So any favorite tool, favorite software, however it is that you add things to PDF documents is fully functioning if you get your forms out of the virtual compliance assistant. Excellent. Let's start talking about what's happening when, I forgot I had one more question. Oops. Which of these projects complies with the Energy Code and you're ready to hit print, we're ready to do download PDF. You can still download PDF for B. You guys have got this right. A represents something that is fully compliant to the mandatory and prescriptive requirements of the code for this building feature. Building B does not. And that either means we need to go back and change our design, or we need to consider using the performance approach. And if we download PDFs, we're going to get a watermark that says cannot be used for compliance. And that might be just fine if I'm doing that to help facilitate determining as a team how are we going to go about showing compliance to this project.
Gina,
we're ready to go back.
What's nice about B here is that it tells you exactly what is not compliant. You can see distribution, ventilation, controls, you comply. So what you need to go back and look at is the dry systems.
I have to say that is one of my favorite parts too. I really do. I can use my time wisely. And I need to, then it's narrowing on the conversation of what needs to happen in terms of the mechanical design. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. And let's start talking about what happens with value engineering. Us energy consultants have learned to hate value engineering, mainly because a lot of times value engineering doesn't consider what is required for that project to meet the Energy Code. I've had so many times where they're like, let's get rid of the VRF system and go electric resistance, baseboard heaters. Let's get rid of the rigid insulation on the walls. Let's get rid of any of the spray insulation on, on the raised mass floor in the parking garage. So how can we make sure that value engineering is still upholding compliance to the project? And how might we utilize the virtual compliance assistant through my construction administration basically submittal review. We love using this for submittal review. But first, let's talk about value engineering. Now, as alternatives are also, honestly, usually value engineering just says get rid of this, get rid of this. Does that mean that compliance has been upheld, or do we have to push back against the value engineering and say no, because now I can't meet compliance to code? And how can I make sure this happens smoothly? So here's an example of my water heating system for my yoga studio. I had spec'd a couple of point-of-use electric instantaneous water heaters underneath, my labs in the 2 bathrooms. And value engineering came back and said, you know what, it's going to be cheaper for us to just put in one 20-gallon electric resistance water heater instead of these multiple point-of-use. We're going to be saving money. This is something we recommend for the project. So I'm going to go back. Remember, I can go straight into these tables, and I am going to hit that edit button. And I'm going to go there, and I'm going to change the water heater now to a 20-gallon you know, what's being recommended with value engineering, and I see here, great, I'm still compliant to code with this value engineering alternative. So I'm going to go, okay, if you guys really think that this is going to save money for the project, let's go ahead and do it. I now then also have the revised forms that I can provide and document for when I go back to the building department if I have gotten my permit approval already, and to confirm that the alternative design meets code. Sometimes I find some building departments don't always require you to go back to a plan check. And Sally, why do we recommend people then make sure they go through this and still have this in their back pocket?
You know, we do get questions from contractors and building owners saying the inspector is asking for a revised form because they don't see the form matching what's installed. And in that case, it would be good to do what you're saying and have that form revised based on that substitution or the value engineering, so that you can say, we already confirmed it complies, here's the form. You know, worst case, this doesn't happen, and you go back and find out, that substitution didn't comply, and then you've got a problem because it's installed. Yeah.
The worst thing to be finding out something doesn't meet code is after it's installed, and I've had it happen on so many projects, which is in part why we're offering our advice here on how best to utilize this tool. With especially this part of the project, construction administration, historically, energy consultants have no play, no place, no ability to even be part of the construction administrative process. And most people feel that that energy consultant, we're done with you the minute we got our building permit. You are in charge of the forms, that's it. Energy compliance to us is forms. I'm a little passionate about this. Energy compliance is not forms. It's that the design and install is meeting the promise of the energy code. So are we sure what's being submitted by the contractors is equal or better than what was already promised and or as a mandatory minimum? Or is it worse? And if it's worse, well, can we still meet code? Is at the end of the day, am I always going to deny a submittal that's not equal or better from what is in the design documents that's been approved? Or can I say, okay, well, this is going to be an add-on cost, but I'm going to go ahead and approve it with comments because it's not exactly what was designed, but it still meets code. So how can we confirm that easily? Well, we can go back, because remember, we had everything in the virtual compliance assistant. So they're submitting, instead of a 4-ton system, they're submitting they want to do this 5-ton system of this very specific product, and there's some slightly different efficiencies associated with this product. So my cooling capacity, my airflow, and my efficiencies are different than what is in the design documents. Is that okay? Can I meet compliance and say, okay, that's good, I had done something else, but this is still going to work? So we go in and we hit that edit button again, and we confirm that, yeah, everything with this airflow, with this capacity, with this efficiency, because remember, this tool tells me what that minimum efficiency is. I'm confirming that dry system. I'm confirming the fan systems. It's saying everything is great, everything is green. Okay, approved with comments, and that we potentially have to update design documents to support this submitted equipment that's being approved for the contractor. Coordinate testing. So there's a lot of testing and verification that's supposed to happen throughout the construction practice, construction phase of the project. Does everyone know who's doing what? Does everyone know what needs to be tested? When does it need to be third party? Because HERS verification, NRCV, is third party, but acceptance testing, NRCA forms, are not third party. But I do need to make sure my contractor has someone on board who is a certified acceptance test technician. When should the testing happen? What happens if someone went and changed stuff out in the field after it's been tested? So this is when I can go in and look at that summary. This is where the summary is important, and I go to these certificates. And it lists, this tool, just like the forms do, auto-populates what installation forms, and the installation forms are provided by the contractor, and what acceptance testing is required for these specific features. And this is the time when I think this is why it's important to have contractors have access to this, so they can be looking through not only what was checked off as required, but potentially make comments on things that maybe wasn't checked off. So this is an example here of, if it's a constant volume single zone system, the MEC 03 is not automatically populated by the tool. And that's because it so depends on so many things. So this is something that needs to be overridden. There needs to be someone that goes in and edits what's going on and moves the no to yes, because the MEC 03 does need to be required, because this is a single zone constant volume system. So we're cleaning up and making sure that all the applicable acceptance testing is going to happen for the right equipment. So we do need to go in here and kind of read these and see if it's giving us any guidance on if we need to do some additional work with these forms. But here we go. Here we have that list of what's going on with acceptance testing for which building features, and giving access to those contractors to this allows them to easily see what's going to be required. Now, Sally, we know these are printed on the forms. Why do we think this is a tool that could be utilized in addition to the forms that are included in the drawing package that's somewhere out in that construction trailer out on in the field?
Well, there's a code requirement that does require that all the forms end up with the building owner. So having the contractor have access to all of the forms, NRCI, NRCA, and the field forms, does make sense, and they can print it and put it in a package together for that building owner. They also have to show these forms to the building inspector. So it does make sense for the contractor to have access to the project.
And in fact, there's another resource we have with Energy Code ACE. It's our building inspector checklist. And I like using this to pre-populate what's going on. So I, the energy consultant, am going in and I am going through this checklist. And this is all about the in the field forms, because this is all about allowing the inspector to use these forms as a method to verify compliance to the energy code. You can see every single building feature was there. And I go through and cross off, that's what's in red. You guys don't have to worry about this. I have no HERS, there's no NRCV forms, you didn't trigger commissioning, we don't have cool roof. These are things you guys don't have to worry about. But everything highlighted in yellow, make sure you coordinate with the specific sub on making sure they document this, and that this NRCI SPV for the solar zone up there on the roof, that the NRCI ENV with the various, this is the window contractor, that they're giving us what we need before they leave, because they did their work, but we didn't go for final till a year later. Did we make sure that we're coordinating all of this? So this is just another resource we have at Energy Code ACE that potentially could be used to help be organized, and I, as an energy consultant, can go about using that as a tool, and I didn't mean to do that. Let's do a check your understanding. So, when would be the best time to get a new project started in this virtual compliance assistant tool? You guys might have your own feel about how you might want to use it, but what might be the best time? When's the best time to review the compliance of your design features is meeting code? And when would be the best time to use this tool to review submittals? So I have most of you saying the best time to get a project started is schematic design. But I totally support the person who said design development. That's a choice. It's 100% a choice when you think the best time is, or when you think this can be utilized by your teams. I like schematic design, but I do get it. DD is a time that other people really think about it. When is the best time to review compliance? Yeah, get started at design development. It needs to happen before CD and submitting for permit, but DD is an excellent time to start that review process. And when could you use this to review submittals? Not only during construction bidding. I love that I had one person fix construction bidding. We find as energy consultants, we are now reviewing bidding and making sure what's being bid is compliant to code, not only with what was designed, with maybe even then alternative solutions that might dictate a redesign, but can we say here and now, okay, that bid will work because it actually can be shown to be compliant to code. Excellent. And then I have one last question for you guys. Are you ready to begin using the Virtual Compliance Assistant? Is this something you think you'll use? Is this something that you're like, hey, yeah, I gave you 2 hours of my time, but I don't think this is a good fit for our office? This is a true question for you guys. We kind of want to know, are what we're doing with this something that you think you'll use, or at least give it a try? So I 100% the not sure vote. I really do. And I see that only 3 of you are answering this. I get it where you're like, yeah, Gina, we really don't want to say out loud what's going on. But this really, truly was a question to get some feedback from you guys. And we'd love to hear from you after today. Sally, what's a great way for them to give us feedback as they do start using this? And they might have some feedback for us like Michael did about the, hey, give us what are the most common errors you see?
I think the best way to do that is in that report an issue. So when you're in the tool, if you go up to your name on the right-hand side and then scroll down, you can report an issue. The issue doesn't always have to be a bug. If it is a bug, you can call it that. But if it's just feedback, good or recommendations for improvements, I think that would be a great way to pass it to us.
And I got to tell you guys, we were pretty darn sure we were going to be done early with our session with you guys today, and we are. We are going to start wrapping things up with you. I'm giving you back a half hour of your day, and thank you for being with us. We do have a few more things to talk to you about, such as, this will happen. Now it'll be like multiple slides at a time because I keep pressing this button. Okay. So where is there some more help for you guys? So remember, we do have our 3 buckets, tools, training, resources. Not only can you, through the Virtual Compliance Assistant, be reaching out to us, you can always submit a question. We do typically answer within 24 hours, and this is any question you have, whether it's code related, you can't get something to work in software, it's something about our website. We answer all questions. And we'd be happy to do that for you. The Energy Commission is also there for you. Remember, the hotline, with all of the COVID shutdowns and everything going on, they don't answer the phones. You actually leave a message because they're all working from home. So, yeah, they look for messages, but honestly, I tell people email. Do the Title 24 at energy.ca.gov is the best way to be able to interact with the hotline. The blueprint's one of the best things that comes out of the Energy Commission, so please make sure you've signed up for that blueprint listserv, is because then it will automatically be sent to you 4 times a year. We are going to be asking you to take a survey, and that's just to make sure, what did you think of this? This was a little atypical for us, doing something that was a little shorter and doing something that wasn't 100% code heavy. Let us know what you thought about this. We are going to be sending you some emails regarding taking our survey. You only have to take it once. So thank you for just ignoring those other emails if you already did the survey. We are going to be sending you a certificate of participation for being here today. If you attended as a group, could you please send me an email and let me know everyone who was there, because I have it only linked to the email address that was used to sign in. If you have any questions after day specifically, my information is here. Email is the best way to get a hold of me. I very rarely am able to answer the phone. Sally is available. Catherine and her team are the magic behind the curtain that makes these work. Jill Marber is the manager for the Decoding Talk series. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, do feel free to reach out directly to her. Are there any questions we have not dealt with? If you go ahead, if you want to raise your hand, we can unmute you. Or if you want to type in any questions, but Sally and I want to make sure that we have all your questions answered. I would love to know, did anyone play around with doing this along with us? Did anyone get into the virtual compliance assistant and play along with us? Yeah, thank you, Michael. So if there are no questions, Sally and I want to thank you for being here, right, Sally?